Okay. Well, I guess I'll start. My name is Adria Bergeron. It's Adria. Bergeron is Bergeron, and I work for the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. So to start, I want to say good afternoon and thank you so much for being here today. Before we begin, though, I do want to express our most sincere sympathy and our deepest condolences to the family and everyone who was affected this weekend at the lake. It was obviously a very tragic incident, and our hearts go out to everyone who was affected at this time. So it's very, very difficult for everyone, and we just want to express that first. As I mentioned, my name is Adria Bergeron. I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. Joining me today are Sheriff Orvis Campbell at the Tuscarawas County Sheriff's Office, John Lewis, who is the Park Manager at Atwood Lake Park, as well as an MWCD Ranger, and Dr. Jeff Cameron, who is the Tuscarawas County Coroner. Over the past 2 days, MWCD Rangers have worked in partnership with Sheriff Campbell's office, along with numerous fire departments, dive teams, and other partner agencies in search and recovery efforts. We are profoundly grateful for the dedication and professionalism shown by all who have responded and assisted in this event. The safety and well-being of our park guests and our community members is always top priority, and we remain committed to working together with the Sheriff's Office in this investigation. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Sheriff Campbell to provide additional information.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Before I begin, we didn't know how many would show up. So on the back table where the coffee pot is, there is a timeline of events for you guys to pick up before you leave. I'm going to go through them with you, but they'll be there if you like. There's also a statement from the family involved. The Amish family has provided a statement that they asked us to give to you guys. If we run out, please do not be concerned. We've got someone here that'll make all the copies you want. Nobody should leave without it. And my business card is back there. My name is Orvis Campbell. That's O-R-V-I-S. Campbell, C-A-M-P-B-E-L-L. And I'm the Tuscarawas County Sheriff. So as I go along here, I don't have anything prepared. I'm just going to kind of go through it honestly as I can and kind of try to make it make sense to you. It's been very difficult. If you saw us stepping out of the room, there were developments taking place constantly. That's why we had to set up a time for 2, and we couldn't do separate interviews. It's something that's been going on all day. I'll have a couple of slides up here just to kind of help give you guys an orientation to the lake area and what was taking place. So this call began at about 10:39 a.m. on Saturday, which is August 23rd. 911 received a call of a golf cart that had gone into Atwood Lake. And at the time that we received the call, people didn't realize what it was. It looked as though it could have been an unintentional event. It could have just been an accident, but it was a woman and 3 children on that golf cart. There were actually people, according to witnesses, chasing the lady, the golf cart, through the grass, yelling at her to hit the brakes because they thought it was, careening out of control. We later find out that that's not the case. As the first witnesses arrived on scene, the golf cart had flipped off the edge of a stone wall, which I'll show you here in a few minutes, and landed in the lake. And it was fully submerged, but it was easily visible. The kids, who were 15 and 18, got out of the vehicle and stood on top of it, and then witnesses thereby helped the woman out of the lake. The first witness that arrives to help is asking the woman, does she need help up? And he tries to help, and she suggests to him not to help her, to just pray for her. And that was the first statement that suggested this was more than an accident at that lake. From there, they did pull her out of the water, and rangers were immediately dispatched to the calls. And upon them arriving on scene, they heard some of the same concerning type statements. There was a pretty immediate statement made that she had given her son to the Lord. Now keep in mind, she's there with a 15-year-old daughter and 2 18-year-old sons, and nobody knows what son she's talking about. There's no other child there. And they tried to discern and tried to comfort her. She actually attempted to flee for a minute. She was not rational at that moment. She attempted to flee and hide and was quickly gathered up and brought back to the scene. They were all taken kind of over to the Atwood Welcome Center, where, you know, the Rangers began speaking with the children and speaking with the woman, and none of it was just making a lot of sense. There was just a lot of statements that, as we continued to try to put them together, were not rational. Deputies were dispatched to the call about 10:53. I didn't get advised myself until about 11:41, and at this point they're starting to put it together and they realize there's a problem. We may have a 4-year-old child missing. That's a statement coming from the mother and then confirmed by the teenage kids that there's a 4-year-old son missing, and that the husband and father is missing. Now I will tell you, as we all hear that, you can imagine what we're hoping is, we're hoping she's just sick and that the father's got this 4-year-old somewhere in the campground. You know, both of them are missing, and that's the hope that everybody's trying to gather information for. When I'm contacted, I ask dispatch detectives. In the room with me is Detective Captain Adam Fisher, who was in charge of the case or is in charge of the case, and other detectives responded, and they're actually on scene on something right now. So we begin searching and trying to delineate her statement. Now, there was a lot of confusion initially about where these parents were, where the father was, where the 4-year-old was, and then she began to express more that she had thrown the child in the water to give that child to God. But we didn't know where in the water. It's a big lake. It's a lot of places. We didn't know if it was there where the cart had taken place. If you could bring up the first slide. This is a big picture prepared for us by our friends over here at Muskingum Watershed. And the main portion of the lake, when you come in, before you enter the actual park, there's a big marina here and a restaurant. It's pretty well known. And we'll leave this up later if people want to come up and take close-up photos, whatever you want. But she actually drove this golf cart right between these two buildings, and it hit a stone wall there that makes a barrier of the water, and it flips into the water. That's how the call starts. And to be honest with you, it was reported as an accident. That's how the call came into 911, as an accident. Later on, through some discussions, we learned that the individuals had a pontoon boat that belonged to a family company, and it was on an area that we call the Causeway, or is called the Causeway, and it's labeled there as dock. As statements come out, she suggests that she had thrown the 4-year-old in the water off the dock to give to God. Initially, divers were dispatched to that dock area. Nothing was found in the sides of the dock where the boat was. Divers also were working where the golf cart went in. And then at the very top of the picture, you're going to see a circle that says kayak launch. The only thing that took place at that kayak launch was just prior to the golf cart going into the water. The mother and the children were witnessed huddling very closely, heads touching, praying very intently next to the water by the kayak launch. So much so that it actually scared some witnesses. They thought they were crying, they were emotional, and they didn't know what was going on. That was before the crash or anything. So as the search goes on throughout the day and we're checking bodies of water, we learn about this praying incident at the kayak launch. So we had divers in there as well. That's a very shallow area. It was easy. It was an area that we didn't need to do very much at. But I bring it up because I know the social media community was talking about searching at the kayak. It solely took place because they were praying there, and it was described as a concerning moment, and we decided to check that water. The actual incident that we're going to discuss here only took place where the golf cart crashed, and then the rest of it at the dock. Captain Fisher, when he was dispatched, I asked him to go directly to the hospital. So you'll notice that there's some time delay before we get involved, and because she was uncooperative, a decision was made to have her taken to the hospital for evaluation. Her statements were radical. She had run from them and hid in some weeds and was easily captured. Her statements were bouncing around, so they felt the need to get her some medical help. Captain Fisher went straight to the hospital before coming to the scene, and he did his first interview with her at 12:20 that day. It's been one of the most difficult cases placing the statements together, and I want to word this carefully because I don't believe the mother's ever lied to us. But the statements not made sense a lot. And then in a second interview, it made a little more sense, and then when we were able to add pieces from the three children, we were able to kind of paint a picture. But she's been relatively truthful with us, and she has indicated every time she's been spoken to that she put the 4-year-old in the water to give to God. Now, in her statement, what she says is that she and her husband went to this dock and they jumped in the water because God was speaking to them and telling them to do things. Things to prove their worthiness to God, to show their faith as complete. And they didn't do very well in those. Some of them were bizarre. Some of them were just swimming exercises. The most bizarre was that God told her to allow herself to be swallowed by a fish, as bizarre as that sounds. And I tell you that statement not to make fun, but I tell you that statement so you can have a picture of how difficult it was to communicate with her. It just wasn't making a lot of sense. They get up out of the water after a while, and they decide it's silly, and they decide to walk back to where they were staying in a family company-owned RV, which was over in this area. We intentionally not pointing out where their camper was, but it was over in that area. So they walked all the way back. When the husband got back to the house, according to the wife, he felt very disappointed in himself because he didn't do very good in his task because he didn't have enough faith, and he turned and immediately said, "I'm going back to the lake to swim to the sandbar." Now, the sandbar, I'm not a lake expert, guys, but the sandbar is way over here somewhere, and he's on this little dock. His brother had told us he could swim, but he wasn't a strong swimmer. And she said he left their RV again at about 5:30 in the morning after getting right back home. Keep in mind, he hasn't been asleep at night, and he's heading back there. For the longest time, we weren't sure if that was true. We didn't know if we could believe her statement. But the following day, we did run into a witness that put him alone at that dock, wearing the clothes that he left behind at the dock at 6:30 a.m. So it's kind of bizarre, but at 1:15, him and his wife go there. They do these tasks. They walk back. Then he walks back alone. We have a good independent witness that says, yes, I definitely saw him here. He was wearing these clothes, and he wasn't doing anything odd, but he was at the dock by himself. That's at about 6:30 a.m. Saturday morning. Keep in mind now, we're at about 4 hours before the crash. So we're about 4 hours before the crash. She does not see him again. Sometime just after 8 a.m., and this statement from both her children and other independent witnesses, she is seen loading up the 4-year-old on a golf cart near their RV and taking off very erratically. Everybody that will comment or any witness that you encounter that saw her driving will tell you she was driving very dangerously. She flipped the cart at one time. She was seen on 2 wheels another time. Of course, she was praying by the kayak. And she left. The children saw her leave with the 4-year-old. And then a while later, she came back. She states that she went to the dock and that she threw the 4-year-old in because that's what she needed to do as an offering to God. She drives back to her camper. She picks up a 15-year-old daughter, drives her back to the dock, and makes her get in the lake and leaves. She drives back one more time, gets her 18-year-old sons, or twins. They come back, and she makes them jump in the lake to do some tasks, and they do. They all survive. They climb out of the lake, and at one point, according to the children, she makes them all lay down on the dock with their hands in the water to pray for their little brother and father because they were gone and had gone to heaven. We have divers now focused in a couple of areas, but our main concern is the dock. It's pitch black underwater. I'm sure you've all experienced swimming in a lake like that. So it's all by feel. It's all by sonar. But at 6:03 p.m., divers located the 4-year-old only about 10 feet off the dock, and at that time, he was on the bottom of the lake. We continued searching till about 9:30 p.m., and we had to end the search due to darkness. At 9:44 p.m., Captain Fisher went back to the hospital for a second interview with the mother, and she was able to provide some slightly additional information, which I've already given to you, which was about the husband leaving on his own at 5:30. We resumed the search at 7 o'clock a.m. on Saturday, and the immediate focus is we're going to go much farther out because we understand now that he thinks he's going to swim to the sandbar. We had some concern as to whether or not he jumped in the lake to try to rescue the 4-year-old so he would be close, but now we believe he's on a mission to swim, so he's further out. So the boats start working further out with sonar, trying to locate anything. They did identify a signal or a blip under the water that they thought was suspicious. And at 8:29 a.m., they located the male 53 yards off the end of the dock on the bottom of the lake. And the divers are both telling me in both cases that the bodies were completely rested on the bottom of the lake. For us, obviously the recovery efforts end, but for us, the search warrant continues. About 1:49 p.m., Judge Elizabeth Tamakis here of our Common Police Court signs a search warrant, and the guys are going in there. And if you're wondering what we're looking for, we don't have any idea. We're looking for a weapon. We're looking for notes to explain it. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for. Honestly, nothing was found or taken. Photographs. There was a Bible open, and stuff like that. But we found nothing that directly mapped out what was going to take place that day or anything like that. So now we have the father recovered. He was found in his underwear, his clothes. He had removed his clothes, we believe himself, and laid them on his pontoon boat that the family company had, and went in, we believe, just like she said. Now, I interviewed the children, and I got to speak with the grandparents, and I've developed a relationship with the father's brother. They couldn't be nicer people. As you can imagine, the kids were extremely confused. I can tell you their mindset was that whatever their mother and father says is the way it is. They don't question anything, so when they were told to jump in the lake, they jump in the lake. And that, as a parent of great kids, that's still difficult for me to imagine. I just can't imagine my kids not questioning me, but that's how they're raised, and when you meet them, you can immediately identify that's how they operate. They would try to give us information but couldn't stop crying. They kept focusing on the fact that they were praying for their dad and little brother, and it was tough to get the information from them because much of what they were given us, they were only told by their mother, so they took it as truth. And then when we would separate, listen, were you told that or did you see it? We got, we got a little further. The kids were then, by law, we would involve Job and Family Services. That took calls to both Tuscarawas and Holmes County because the family resides in Holmes County. And with our blessing and thanks, they were able to release those kids, to the family over there. And we have complete confidence that this family will take excellent care of them. The family will tell you that, in their own statement, but we're aware of some issues with especially the mother, but also the father. But there were never any discussions of harming anyone. They had some religious beliefs. What we recognize is this: she was clearly in mental crisis, no doubt about it. You talk to every witness or every first responder, she was in mental crisis, and it just simply manifests itself in what we call a spiritual delusion. Outside of that, I'm not going to try to speak to it because you can look at me in this uniform and know I'm just not qualified. I'm not a mental health professional, I'm not a doctor, and we'll let those people do that. She's remained cooperative with us up to yesterday, and at this moment, she's still in the hospital. So I know that I'm going to end here fully expecting a bunch of questions at the end, and we'll try to answer everything we can, and I'm going to introduce Dr. Jeff Cameron here so he can release his portion, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Sheriff Campbell. It's quite the story and exceedingly tragic. I am the Tuscarawas County Coroner, Jeff, C-A-M-E-R-O-N. Rachel, if you want to pass out the media releases. Everything I'm going to say is on this release. We should have enough copies for everyone. On August 23rd, 2025, the Tuscarawas County Coroner's Office was notified by Tuscarawas County 911 at approximately 6 p.m. that the body of a child had been recovered from Atwood Lake near the campgrounds. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He has been identified as Vincent Miller, 4 years of age, of the Millersburg, Ohio area. The following morning, Sunday, August 25th, at approximately 8:30 a.m., our office was notified that the body of the suspected father of the boy had been located at the same location. He was also pronounced dead at the scene. He has been identified as Marcus J. Miller, 45 years old, of the Millersburg, Ohio area. The bodies of both of these individuals have been taken to Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner's office for autopsies. The incident is still under investigation by both our office as well as the Sheriff's office. The cause and the manner of these two deaths is pending until completion of the autopsies and completion of the investigation.
So I think those were the prepared statements, but we know there's going to be questions.
Sure. Can you tell us whether it's the mother and the father or just the mother? Was there an intent to go there for this to be the outcome, for the family to die in the lake?
When you say to go there, I do not believe that was the intent when they were planning their trip to Atwood Lake. Getting some background from the family, this trip had been planned for a while. The family was aware that they believed they were misinterpreting passages of the Bible, but had never made statements to any harm to anyone. I don't believe until the husband and wife went out that there was any plan to do anything. The husband and wife then, the wife especially, was supposedly hearing voices that she believed were God that led her and her husband to go out and jump in the lake first. But I do not think it was a plan. And I know that, or I believe that, based off of detailed conversations with the family, that they were just going to the lake.
Can you describe the role that, I believe you called it spiritual delusion, that played in this?
Well, for us, we see people in mental health crisis a lot. And I'm using the word crisis because I can't explain whether it's a moment or an ongoing illness. Okay, when we encounter her, she's in crisis. It's a moment. And people manifest that different ways. Some people become extremely happy, and as bizarre as that sounds, they become almost euphoric. And some people become more doom and gloom. Hers seemed to be more doom and gloom and focused on the part that they were not good enough people and not worthy of God's love, and that they had to prove that. I can tell you the family had talked to them before about ideology from the Bible, but they had never heard anything about wanting to die, needing to offer anybody up to God, or anything like that.
As far as the husband, did he play any role in any of the, for instance, taking the life of the 4-year-old? Or do you think his reaction is totally separate from that?
We believe, from her statements and from the timeline we were able to put together with witnesses, that he had nothing to do with the 4-year-old going into the water, or of course had nothing to do with the 3-year-olds later. So.
Now, you talked about how she picked up the 14-year-old, asked them to swim, came back, grabbed the 18-year-olds in the sequence of events. What happened? Did the 14-year-old stay in the water? Did the 14-year-old come back with her? Were they thrown in the same area of the water?
Okay. So, good question. If I said 14, I was incorrect. She's 15. The daughter's 15. The 2 twin boys are 18. So if I said 14, I'm sorry. It's our understanding that she drove the daughter individually back to the same point where she put the 4-year-old in, that she had the 15-year-old jump in, and that she left the 15-year-old to go get the 18-year-olds. So I wanted to point out the area of camping over here, just because I wanted you to be able to picture the amount of time it takes to drive your cart over to get them. I don't want to point out the individual. First of all, this is a historic photos. None of the campers are probably the same. But secondly, this has nothing to do with the rest of the family and the company that have that RV. But she left the daughter in the water and came back then with the sons and had them jump in. I can't give you a time as the amount of time she made them stay in the water. I just know that at some point she became satisfied that they had proven their worth or faith. I guess that's a better way to say it, faith. And that they then laid down on a dock with their hands in the water praying for their little brother and dad.
Any sense of whether or not this family was a member of a cult or something like that, and that's why they felt inadequate?
As you can see from the statement from the family, we met many members of their church. Their bishop came. They seemed like wonderful people. Their official statement will describe that they're members of an old order Amish church as a church of Christian faith. That's about all I can tell you. The other family we dealt with were just like you and I. They completely recognized these thoughts as irrational, not making any sense, and they were not in line with them at all.
I don't have the statement, so this might be answered there, but
Okay.
Is there any indication that their mental state, the parents, was exacerbated by any sort of drug or alcohol involvement?
No indication at all. We will obviously have some results from both of them, most likely from the mother going to the hospital and then the father through pathological services and autopsy. But as of right now, there's no suggestion of any of that, nor do we suspect it. The search warrant of the RV didn't suggest anything of it, so nothing at all.
Sheriff, is this a case of undetected or untreated mental illness that led to these terrible events?
I'm gonna lean a little bit. I don't want to speak like I'm an expert, but the family were aware, especially, that the mother was having some issues. So I would have to say it's more untreated than unexpected. They knew there were some issues. In fact, there was a bit of a family intervention Thursday in just making sure that, they were thinking the right way. They had gotten a concerning call. Again, in that Thursday evening conversation, a day before they even come to the lake, there's no mention of anyone needs to die. There's no mention of anything like that. So there was no professional treatment at that point. That part I can say has been not treated.
Do you intend to charge the mother with crimes?
We do.
can you tell us what they are?
Yeah, let me get right back to that here. I am going to answer that because part of what was developing at the end. It was pretty recent. John?
In the case of the father, did he just drown or was it suicide?
That's going to be more of a determination for Dr. Cameron and a tough one, but he's going to have to probably highly consider the information that we received from mother, most of which, while it didn't make a lot of sense at first, was accurate. She actually drew us a map of where we would find the child. Now, that didn't come till much later in the day, but she was cooperative in that way. And we were concerned when she said her husband walked off on his own. We didn't know fully if we could trust that, both because of honesty and illness, but we then encountered a separate witness that definitely with 100% certainty puts the father there at the dock alone at 6:30. So we know he was there alone, it was there of his own fruition, and we know what she says he told him. And it seems to match the evidence. So it's my opinion, based off of what we have so far, that he took his clothes off to attempt to swim out to prove his faith and likely drown accidentally. I will add that I told you he didn't sleep much the night before, but I think from family will tell you they didn't sleep much the night before that either. So I just think that there were things bothering them, and this, their delusion kept them awake.
When the other siblings were in the water, when you talked to them, did they say anything that they saw their sibling, their 4-year-old sibling in the water?
They never saw the 4-year-old. In fact, that was some confusion at the beginning. The initial statements made us think that they did see that. But what they were doing was they were just repeating what mom told them as though it was the absolute truth. And then when we separated that, we found out that they had not seen that at all and just were taking mom's word for it.
Is there any indication at all of outside influence that may have perpetuated the idea that the family had to prove their faith?
There's not been any mention to us at all, none.
All the kids, she takes them each individually, go swimming, and then she drives into the water. What was her reason of driving into the water with everyone on board?
So Captain Fisher, you can correct me if I'm wrong. After she gathered them up and felt that they had passed their test, and she drove around the lake erratically, praying a couple places, it's our understanding that she then heard the voice again telling her to drive into the lake. So she goes from the kayak launch area praying and starts back over and makes her way, to the Marina West and drives into the lake. So it was just a completely separate voice that said, go do this. And she did it.
At what time was the 4-year-old placed in the water by the mother? And did anyone witness that?
They didn't. So as you look at this dock, this causeway, there are campers on this end and there are campers on this end, but it's just a narrow road. And if you're not traveling on that road at that minute, it's not so long that you can't see there, but if no one's focused on watching, nobody paid any attention. There are no witnesses. Other than the witnesses that know that she left sometime shortly after 8 a.m. with the 4-year-old on the golf cart. We don't have anybody that witnessed her putting him in the water.
Is there any way that she would have known that her husband had drowned or was?
I don't think she would have known. I think she would have guessed. She believed that he was going to do this test, and she made comments that she believed he failed because his faith wasn't good enough or he wasn't a good enough man.
Sheriff, I have to ask you, two people that have this unusual view of faith and the water, and we all know how dangerous water is. What are your thoughts on the fact that a husband and wife had this unusual view?
I think you're asking my opinion.
Yeah.
Because my opinion is not based on any fact. But we've seen this before, the phrase, don't drink the Kool-Aid, when people can be convinced of what's right, when there's no reality to it, and how something completely irrational and who makes no sense to any of us, that like-minded people can be convinced of that. We see it in politics. We see it in these irrational things that go forward. I think this was a a husband very devoted to his wife. I think they were also devoted to the Bible, and that just manifested itself incorrectly. And I don't think there's making a lot of common sense out of it. I just really don't.
The scene at the kayak launch with, she was with the older children and they had their heads bowed and they were crying. Is there any indication that she told them what they were going to do? Are we to believe that she told them that they were all going into the lake together and not coming back out?
No. I think at that point, they were just praying in different locations for their brother and father. Am I right?
Did
Adam?
the other children know that she had placed Vincent in the water?
Yes.
That he was gone?
Yes. That's why they were praying for them. She had told them that she had to give their brother to God, and there was a test. And, I mean, I told you guys earlier about the statement about being swallowed by the fish. I know how ridiculous that sounds, but I thought it was an important statement to make because I think it's the statement that's so out of out of reality that it would help you guys understand just how far the mental process had gone here. Yes, ma'am.
So the 4-year-old went before the father?
No, actually, we believe the father was already gone. When she went back and took the 4-year-old and threw him in the waters, the father was seen at the dock at 6:30. He wasn't seen in the water, but he was seen at the dock. She doesn't go back till after 8, and she indicates she did not see the father. The clothes were already on the pontoon, and he was gone.
And what kind of rituals were the kids performing?
They were just told to tread water and swim and wait and swim in different positions and stuff like that. It was just whatever command that they were given to test their faith. So it wasn't anything specific that wasn't like a ritual you would define as a ritual. It was just like, oh, he wants you to float in this position for so long, that kind of stuff.
These were commands given from the mom to the kids?
What's that?
These were commands given from the mom to the kids?
Yes.
Can you tell us what the other children said when she was driving, what she was telling them, what we're doing as we're driving recklessly toward the lake?
I don't think there was any discussion at that point. One witness said the kids looked terrified. I don't think there was any planning. I don't think she was cluing them in. From the moment she got out of the water and said that she had offered her son to God, there was a time when she was singing. And she was also singing at the hospital. So I'm not sure that they even had the time to discuss. I want to go back to the statements from the witnesses that said every witness that saw that cart moving said it was moving extremely dangerously, turning and almost toppling at every corner. So I don't think there was a lot of discussion going on. It was not a leisurely drive.
Once again, can you crystallize what she said and what you were able to gather, what her husband's view of being at the lake, what they were trying to accomplish?
Boy, there's a lot of guessing there.
Well,
I think according to family, the day before the lake, they went to the lake, they were just going to relax. It was actually, the day they arrived at the lake was actually the mother's 40th birthday. And they were just going there for a weekend. That's why this family had bought this RV and camper so they could do it. Now, I don't know that there's any discussion that day that they were going there for anything other than relaxation. But something changed at 1 a.m. when they asked a neighbor for the ride to the dock. And that's the soonest we know that there was a change or an intent.
and then what was their intent going there? What were they trying to prove?
Their worthiness to God, their faith. For example, one of the statements she made was that God told her she could walk on water. She walked off the end of the dock and sunk immediately, of course, and was immediately upset with herself and blamed herself for not having enough faith. So again, it was just those kinds of things. Some of them were swimming positions. There weren't anything that you could describe or pull from a book as a ritual, but she believed she could walk on water, and she believed that she and her husband had to pass these tests to show their faith. And when they didn't, then Vincent became the price to pay for that. It was something they had to offer him for.
Was there anything that she told you that seems to have precipitated these actions?
No. The Thursday night incident involving family, the family just became aware that the father had made a phone call kind of expressing his love for the family. They thought that was out of character. They went over to talk to them, and she had talked about prophecies in the Bible and how she thought maybe the world was coming to an end, that stuff. Nothing to do with her children. They attempted to, and they thought successfully, convinced her that she was misinterpreting passages in the Bible, and that she completely de-escalated. And that after that de-escalation, they felt that not only did they speak differently, but that their body looked different. They looked relaxed. They didn't look, like they were in any sort of crisis state. The next day, Marcus went to see his brother and got supplies for camp. And his brother said he was a whole different person. He was happy, almost seemed sheepishly embarrassed that they had to come over the night before and have that little talk and intervention. And then they went on camping. Now, his brother did have some concerns. He knows that that's not magic, that stuff comes and goes, but he felt like they had stabilized. And he also felt like the lake, which is one of the most peaceful places you can be, would be good for them. Maybe they needed a break, a change of scenery, and some relaxation. So that was the hope.
I actually have a question for the coroner. Is there, at this point, any evidence to suggest that Vincent was, if he became exhausted when he was in the water and then eventually drowned, or was he forced under the water for some period of time? Can you tell that, or is that something we can't determine?
Cannot determine that.
Sure, where is the mother being held?
Mother right now is being held in a locked mental health facility. And I think she's actually being transferred from one to the other. I'm going to get back to your other question now because it's the question everybody's waiting to ask
Can
here.
you identify her as well?
Well, we have not charged her yet, but we do expect that likely tomorrow the Tuscarawas County Prosecutor's Office will issue a charge of aggravated murder for her. I'm sure you're aware of the public records laws. We typically withhold the name until the charges are formalized, and they're just not yet. Our guys were still working on witnesses a little bit ago. We were getting calls constantly. It's just something that we're continuing trying to piece together. It sounds very simple, right? That you show up, she says, I threw my son in the lake, but we're trying to put a story that we can all comprehend together and piece this together in a way that the other family can heal. These kids are just devastated. There were multiple questions about how the kids spoke to us. I want to express that they could say a few words and then they cried so hard they just couldn't even get anything out. And then they would say something, express how they were praying for their brother and dad, but they were also trying to tell us what happened. It was, it was one of those extremely tragic scenes trying to talk to those youngsters. They were good kids, and the rest of the family that I met were good family. So, please take a look at their statement before you go, because there's a statement in there that they made that said, these events of the past weekend do not reflect our teachings or beliefs, but are instead a result of mental illness. I'm not qualified to say whether it's mental illness or not, but I can tell you from this family, this is not a cult-like belief. This is, every one of you are giving me a face like this is unbelievable, this is irrational, and that's the same exact thoughts that this Amish family had. There's no portion of them that thinks there's any point to this.
Sheriff, can you tell us why authorities believe this is an aggravated murder?
So, aggravated murder, and I'm not the prosecutor, but I've got quite a bit of experience with that charge. Aggravated murder does not need to be planned out in great advancement. The fact that she put the child in the cart and drove him to that is enough. We believe that from her statement, that from the moment she left that RV to head to the dock, that she knew what her intent was. She took him specifically to do that, and therefore, it's planned in advance. Aggravated murder only takes a brief moment of pre-thought, and it's a lot less than what people would think it is. Most people think it involves drawing out a plan or thinking it out or what am I going to do with the evidence. It's nothing like that. The fact that she had the thought before she got to the dock and committed the act is enough. So we expect it to be aggravated murder.
about his mother for what she did on the golf cart, the teenage children?
Honestly, I had not spoke to the prosecutor about that. It's not abnormal at all for him to put all of the potential charges in. That was clearly child endangerment. So it would not surprise me at all for him to include those.
What about against her or the husband, making him think?
No,
Do you think
I don't.
any connection there at all? That there's
I think we are far from ever proving that. He's his own man, and if he came to those beliefs that he needed to go make that swim, I'm not sure that, I'm not sure that, yeah. I don't think so. Can you go to the next picture here? These aren't great pictures because we didn't get there till late, but there was a picture there. That was the golf cart submerged right off the end of that dock, and there's the stones to kind of show you what it flipped into. As you can see, it's now fully submerged. The kids very easily got out and stood on the side of it. They were not at all. And then she was pulled from the water. So that just kind of gives you an idea of that. And we'll bring this up later if anybody wants something. And then the next picture, Ryan, I know you don't see the dock because we weren't taking this picture to plan on using it here, but the photographer standing on the end of the dock, and that yellow donut is 53 yards out, and that's where the husband was found. So, thank you so much to the Rangers. They were with us on every portion of this. We don't know anything about this lake. I didn't know this area was called the Causeway, until John taught me. So I do know the lake. I don't know the terminology of it. We were all working side by side. As you can see, this is a Ranger boat out here, and his sole job was to keep shooing away other boats trying to watch. In my first press release, I kind of said that we had been asked to take the lead. Well, that's just in the murder investigation. In no other part were we the lead in anything. We were working as partners, and I don't have a boat, so I couldn't have done any of this without these fire departments and Muskingum Watershed. So, it was the worst couple of days, and I saw a ton of emotion. I know the diver that found the little boy personally, and I've known him for many years. And I can tell you that he swam underwater directly upon him, and it immediately affected him. He came out of the water highly emotional. So, but if anything is good that comes out of this, it's the partnerships that we create. We trust these guys that we work with so much, and it was a great working experience through the most horrible case. Captain Fisher's had a whole crew of detectives. The coroner's investigator here, Rachel, was on scene with us both days. These are people that in this county, what's so nice is we don't have to call dispatch centers asking them. Everybody's got their cell phone, and it's just a quick text and a call, and we get the help that we need.
How old is Mrs. Miller?
40. Yeah, husband's 45 and she's 40. I looked at him because I was going to guess 40, but I wanted to make sure I was correct.